Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is David Brear, and welcome to episode 73 of the 11FS FinTech and Breakfast Show. In this show, we bring you the best and the brightest from around the fintech and banking landscape every single weekday straight into your homes at 8:30 BST, here, live and on LinkedIn. Today, I am thrilled to be joined by Nick Kerigan, who is the former managing director of future payments at Barclays. On this morning's show, we're going to be talking about Nick's innovation insights, his long career at Barclays, and potentially a little bit about where he's going to be heading next. So good morning, Nick. How are you doing?
Good morning, David, and good morning, everyone. Delighted to be on the show this morning. Really excited. It's been part of my morning routine right through the lockdown. Bring my coffee and getting going.
Well, it's fantastic, Nick. You're on the other side of it now. Then you're used to been watching it, and now you're actually on the show as well. So thank you for making the time to come and join us. I mean, Nick, your background is pretty impressive, and actually, I mean, you've been in payments, I think, for quite a long period of time and seen a lot of change during that period. But if we just start with, I mean, you've just left Barclaycard after almost 10 years. If you maybe just give us a bit about your background and your career history.
Yeah, absolutely. So I was recently described on a webinar as a payments industry veteran, which was kind of shocking to me because I consider myself 43 years young rather than old. But it did bring home to me that I've now had over 20 years experience in the payments and banking arena. I started my career, back in '98. I was one of the first grads at the FSA when that was formed. So I was kind of, at that point, a gamekeeper rather than a poacher, if you like. And then I moved into private equity, spent some time, buying, turning around, selling banks. And then latterly 13 years at Barclays. I came in and I was in the group strategy team through the financial crisis. I then went to Barclaycard, got into the payment space, and spent the time there from 2011 onwards. Really a period of rapid growth, and over that period of time, really digital became a predominant thing as you saw contactless started to take off. Mobile payments became a huge thing. Wearables, all of those things, just really picked up. And then most recently, 4 years, I've been leading innovation for the Barclays cards and payments businesses.
Yeah, and I mean, Barclaycard have always been really at the forefront of innovation in payments. I mean, you guys have really, like say, with mobile, with wearables, you've sort of done the investment to try things and see what works, and it feels like you're continually learning. The other thing I'd say as well is, like, actually from the time that you've been there's always been a pretty impressive array and collection of talent at Barclaycard. I mean, the talent side of things always seems to be really important. So, I mean, how have you guys managed to, I guess, firstly, get the permission to do that type of innovation? Because that's pretty hard in a big corporate, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, the part of my most recent role was really driving that kind of experimentation. We had a portfolio of pilots and proofs of concept, and we had permissions to create those new digital experiences and test new technologies. I think that was part of the philosophy that was always there, but that we were explicitly tasked with dialing up. And we did some pretty interesting things. We also, I think, in that period, really step changed the engagement with fintech. Because obviously post financial crisis, we've just seen a massive growth in the importance of fintech, and we recognized that and wanted to be to take the best of fintech and work with that.
True.
I'm just coming back. So we step changed that we sponsored a number of startups through the Barclays Accelerator program, and that resulted in a number of product partnerships and investments by Barclays. So call outs to the folk at Flux in terms of digital receipts, Crowds, who are a supply chain platform, Crowdit, who work in the offers optimization space, Evanim in the digital identity space. All of these fintechs were ones that we kind of brought on and partner with. So yes, there's a cultural aspect to that. There's also a part of being as an innovator, a change agent in trying to drive the culture and demonstrate to people what is possible in a big corporate environment.
Yeah, I mean, we had, as you will have seen, we had Ashok Vaswamy on a couple of weeks ago. It might have been last week. Days have become meaningless, I think, in lockdown at this stage.
I know what you mean.
But it's Barclays and Barclaycard. I mean, you guys have got, as you say, with Flux or with different players, you guys have got a great history of partnerships being a really big part of actually how you manage to sort of change the innovation, change the game. So, I mean, how did you get partnerships to be such a big part of the agenda in the bank?
I think it was it's partly the recognition of the importance of doing that. I think often in a kind of big bank culture, there's a sense that, yeah, because we have a lot of people and our resource, that we can do everything ourselves. And I think part of the first stage almost was kind of recognizing that actually fintechs had a lot to bring and a lot of capability that we wanted to work with, and a lot of talent as well. I mean, the great thing about being part of Barclays is you get to go work with some really, really talented people. And actually, if you can get those really talented people to recognize that there are actually other really talented people who sit in fintech, then you start to get over the kind of, sort of the mental hurdle there. I think the other thing is then actually starting small.
Yeah, I think that's definitely a big part of it. Like you say, I mean, this is
You need to
startup 101, isn't it? Start something small, try and sort of build that momentum around it. And I think in a corporate environment, that's so important as well, isn't it? Because if you can get that trust, that opportunity, and people start seeing the benefit, then it changes people's mindset really quickly, doesn't it?
I think that's absolutely spot on. So you start up and you say, well, this fintech has got this thing. We're going to prove it out in a small proof of concept, and these are the things that we're going to demonstrate through that proof of concept. And then you start to see the benefits coming in from that, and then you can take it up and say, look, we're going to scale this up now. And then you start to build that momentum, and it becomes, you build it into a much bigger, a much longer term kind of relationship. But actually starting small and we're around that kind of experimentation and piloting process is actually good for both sides. It's good for a big corporate because it allows to kind of test and learn.
Sure. It's it is an interesting one. Like actually it's
good also for the fintech because it doesn't waste time.
Yeah,
something's either going to work or not work.
Well, and that's the thing, it changes that process, doesn't it? But and obviously, I mean, lots of things delivered in Barclays and Barclaycard, and that's fantastic. But I mean, you've been on gardening leave for the last couple of weeks, right? Well, last couple of months actually. So so you're off to a new job. Can you tell us a little bit more about where you're off to?
Yeah, so I'm delighted to say I'm off to join Swift, and I'm going to become the head of innovation there. So I'm super excited. As you know, David, in payments, scale is everything. And in Barclaycard, we were, very pleased to be able to process over 250 billion of consumer to merchant payments. You look at Swift, and something north of a quadrillion of dollars. Are driven by Swift every year, and so to be able. It's really exciting to be able to take those innovation learnings. I think there's huge amounts of potential in Swift. Because you've got, over 15 billion messages a year, 11,000 bank and corporate users, just a huge network. And what Swift has driven recently with GPI, which is the new standard to make high-speed cross-border payments in minutes, is super exciting as well. So I'm looking to build on that and bring some, boost the innovation efforts in Swift.
It's amazing. I mean, people always look for, startups with good ideas and big incumbents with all the distribution. But actually, Swift has both of those things, right? It can do really innovative things, like you say, with GPI or various other initiatives. But actually, the scale and the impact that it can have is huge. I mean, I said to you before we went live as well that I'm seeing a lot of Swift seem to be on a real push to bring in a great sort of wave of talent. So that's at a very exciting time to join the organization.
Yeah, I'm back.
Sorry,
you were saying, David?
I was just saying, Nick, the Swift seem to be on a real mission to bring in a new wave of talent into the organization, which is a great time to join.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, obviously there are many colleagues at Swift who've been, around in the organization for a long period of time. So they have the understanding of the heritage, the corporate history and experience. And then over the last 12 months, it seems that Swift has really augmented the talent base. And that's actually one of the things that attracted me to Swift, was the ambition of the new strategy that Swift has. And the great combination of new talent and existing talent. So I feels like I'm really joining at a really good time. And it feels like there's so much opportunity through, really using the capabilities of GPI. You've got ISO 20022 coming in, which will enable richer data through the network. And then also what you see is Swift expanding its reach out. So yes, banks, corporates are users, but also now non-banks as well. So, in an April, for example, Currency Cloud started offering the Swift GPI tracking capabilities to its clients, like TransferGo and those kind of things. So you see a real, expansion of the reach of Swift, I think, into, making it accessible for fintechs, as well as banks and corporates.
Fantastic. I mean, for anybody who doesn't know, I mean, Nick, you as well as, and this is usually very difficult in a big corporate environment, but you put out some fantastic blog posts. And actually, for anybody who hasn't checked them out, you really should go and sort of read some of them that Nick puts out on LinkedIn and various different places from a blog perspective. But I mean, how, in the first place, how have you been allowed or been able to do those things? Is that part, do you think, of the culture that we're sort of talking about with Barclays Card, and Barclays much more broadly, where they're embracing and allowing people to sort of use these other channels? Because most organizations wouldn't allow people to just blog openly about the future payments or the future of banking. So, I mean, how did you go about getting that permission in the first place?
So I think explicitly part of my innovation role at Barclays was actually just to really boost our public profile as an innovator and build the brand around that. So it's actually quite a conscious effort to actually expose some of the thought leadership that we had already, that we were thinking in our heads, but actually bring that out into the market. And so I've been doing that for a while, in terms of, be it on LinkedIn, be it in conferences, all of these good things. And then over the period of the gardening leave, one thing I wanted to do as a passion project really was to do this blog. And actually it helped me think through some of the learnings that I'd had in my career along. Bringing some of those thoughts about, what does it mean to be an innovator in a corporate environment? When's the right time to innovate? What should you be innovating on? These are big questions at the moment. And, for example, you've seen, Mark Andreessen's essay about, is it time, it's time to build, which seems to be picked up in the political sphere now. Build seems to be the latest mantra, doesn't it? So I wanted to be able to engage with those debates. And bring some personal perspectives into them. I don't present them as an official organizational view or anything like that, but I think it's important for people who are, leaders in this space, like yourself, to actually be putting out points of view. And obviously Leda does, great jobs in her blog for 11SS as well. Actually, you bring yourself to that, and you bring your, your thoughts and experience. And I think that's better for the payments and banking community to be able to have these debates actively.
Yeah, I mean, from my perspective, I see it as community is a big part of our agenda. And actually, I mean, I personally say it's like, our mission is to change the fabric of financial services, but we're very realistic that we're not going to do that on our own. So actually, if you believe in a different way, you believe in a different paradigm, it's on you to convince people why what you believe is the right thing, essentially. And that's the best way of sort of doing it, is laying out your arguments and laying out your thinking and seeing who thinks the same thing as you, right? Maybe let's get into that a little bit, because I mean, there's some really great questions for you over on LinkedIn about payments. So maybe if we start with Shushat Tenjay, he says, hi Nick, how do you see the future of payments? What's your view on CBDC and blockchain's impact? I mean, do you think everything that's happening with distributed ledger technology will have an impact on the future of payments?
Yeah, I mean, undoubtedly. I mean, I suppose when I think about the future of payments, one of the things I do is also anchor it in what's happening with COVID at the moment, because COVID has massively accelerated some existing trends in payments and made them really, really obvious. So like the move to cashlessness in the UK, for example, has been massively accelerated. The e-commerce, you know, like 20% of consumers using e-commerce for the first time, massively accelerated. And therefore, we're also then moving from, and I'll explicitly steal from Dave Birch here because it winds him up. From contactless to contact-free transactions, which massively boost mobile digital payments. So all of these trends existed, but they're all being massively pushed now. Now, when it comes to blockchain, what's the influence of blockchain? We did quite a lot of experimentation with blockchain in my previous role, and I'm totally convinced that blockchain will help us solve situations and use cases where you've got manual paper-based and you're trying to increase the efficiency of those. And I think that's like the first wave. I think the second wave around blockchain is kind of what Lex was talking about in his recent piece, and Simon Taylor and I had a good debate about this in the chat. It's actually a business model change, and can the underlying architecture and so forth change the business models around that? And I think that is a wave that will come, but it will take some time. I think when it comes to central bank digital currencies, I think there's a lot of debate at the moment. I'm on the view that I'm yet to be convinced on really what is the benefit of central bank digital currencies. What are you really solving for? Because one of the learnings I've had along my career along the way as an innovator is you've got to think about fundamentally what's the pain point you're solving for. And if you can hook that and find that pain point and then put a solution against it, then you have a winning solution. And so I'm sort of open to the arguments, but I'm yet to be convinced that central bank digital currencies are a killer solution to something.
Yeah, I often wonder whether actually the central bank digital currency is almost training wheels for a truly cashless society, rather than actually them, digitizing the pound. Why don't they? This is the equivalent of the Bank of England spinning up a test bed on the side with using cryptocurrency, using distributed ledger as a test bed for an inevitable completely cashless society, which actually, if you sort of see it that way, it's not an either or, but it's an evolution. Then I can sort of see the benefit. And actually, I mean, we're lucky enough, Nick, to I think do this in a country where our central bank and our regulator are very open to experimentation and understanding of these things, which is definitely been a catalyst for change here. But I mean, one thing that we've definitely seen is, I mean, payments have stopped being purely a separate thing. It used to be that payments was something that you went and did somewhere else essentially before you could do something. You'd decide you wanted the thing, you'd then go to find the payments tooling to make it happen. I mean, increasingly payments are becoming a distributed, not necessarily decentralized, but definitely a distributed functionality, putting the payment wherever the people really need that payment to be. I think Uber's always been, the sort of poster example for this in terms of the way in which the payment is put next to the problem. Do you see it in the payments industry much more broadly that, the payment, the initiation of the payment is going to be, really removed actually necessarily from the big bank or the big payment place, but actually put where the problems actually are and where payments is most beneficial.
Yeah, I'm a huge believer in embedded payments, and that the idea that payments become embedded in whatever kind of service offering you have. Absolutely, you see that with Uber, but you start to see that in other use cases as well. And it's basically, it's no different to thinking about what is the problem I want to be solved, and and going back, I know you're passionate about the jobs to be done framework, right? It's actually solve the job at the point that I want it to be solved, right? And so I do think payments will become embedded in all of these service offerings. That means, as a payment provider, you need to ensure that through APIs or whatever, you can actually deliver the payment at the point of need.
Yeah, it is a changing trend in that, because that then almost the branding of payments when it's embedded it changes. PayPal have been fantastic at this for a long period of time, haven't they, in terms of branding of their buttons wherever it is. But I do think it sort of changes the context of it. I mean, Nick, obviously we're in a funny old place right now, aren't we? We're in a funny old time. I mean, we've sort of seen this movie a little bit before with 2008. Obviously the context is different. Obviously it was a financial crisis rather than a kind of an economic crisis, as it were. But the sort of pieces that we saw from 2008 in terms of the drop in GDP and the impact that had on jobs, and inevitably everything that's happening with COVID is going to lead to a pretty significant level of depression that's going to happen in the markets. And actually that crisis is definitely going to be, we already saw the GDP drop by 20.4% in April in the UK. And actually, we're seeing similar trends coming off the back of each of the months that we're kind of going through. So I guess the view will be that the crisis and everything that we saw last time will probably be a much smaller downward spiral than the one that we're about to see. So, but what sort of lessons do you think we can take from the 2008 crisis into what inevitably is going to be a bigger crisis in the second half of 2020?
Yeah, and I wouldn't downplay any of the impacts that are going to happen. Absolutely, there's going to be huge impacts. I think my point of view, though, is that there's two things we need to bring in mind. First is the needs that consumers and businesses have don't go away. Yeah. And so we find other ways of meeting those needs. And I think that's really, really important. And actually, if you still have the need, but you are economically challenged to do that, then you as a provider need to find better cost position ways to deliver that service, right? Otherwise you can't do business, right? So that would be one fundamental. The second fundamental I think we should bear in mind is a crisis is often a catalyst to innovations, right? And we saw that as a result of the financial. We've seen that going back in time as well. When you look at, sort of radar, the first computers, all of those things coming from wars and disaster, right? Yeah. So not that we wouldn't want those things not to have happened, but we also acknowledge that actually some big innovations can come out of that. So I think this is a point where actually organizations need to double down on innovation and looking for new ways of doing things, rather than saying we're just going to kind of, block and tackle through this and hope it's going to get better and we can go back to the previous ways of doing things.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think it is going to be amazing to see what comes out of this period, because there have been some pretty amazing changes. There have been some pretty amazing people coming together to make things happen. So, Nick, you're about to end one job. You're about to begin a new one. But actually, this is a kind of a long career steeped in sort of innovation and payments. What would be the best piece of advice that you've ever been given? Because a lot of people kind of throw out different parts of advice, but not many people kind of land it in the way that you would want. So what's the best piece of advice you've ever been given?
I think the best piece of advice I've ever been given is really about look for the pain point that nobody else is solving, and then look to find a solution to that. As an innovator, there's always a temptation to do some certain Me Too stuff, and that's fine as far as it goes. But actually, the big game-changing stuff comes from really questioning your assumptions about why do we do something in this way and not in this way, and really getting under the skin of that and creating a solution to it. So yeah, look for the pain point nobody else is solving would be my one.
Yeah, it is amazing how many times organizations just try and copy what somebody else is doing and then wonder why it doesn't have an impact in the market, right? If you want to create something differentiating, you've actually got to differentiate, haven't you? So, all right. Unfortunately, we're going to be running out of time. But Nick, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you so much for taking the time today. I mean, especially on gardening leave. I'm sure if I was on gardening leave right now, I'd still be probably in bed right now. So thank you so much for getting up early to join us. Where can people learn a little bit more about you and the great blogs that you've been kicking out?
Yeah, so you can find me in 3 places: on LinkedIn, Nick-Kerigan, Twitter, Nick_Kerigan, and on Blogger at nickkerigan.blogspot.com. And I just wanted to shout out to all the fintech community who are watching as well, a kind of open invitation to engage with me if you want to become more meaningfully engaged with innovation at Swift, and want have ideas about how you could be part of that journey.
Fantastic. See, look, you're not even in the company yet, and you're already driving people to come and talk about innovation, Nick. Like that's commitment. That's when it isn't just a job, it's something you love, right? And that's a great thing. All right, guys, that's all we have for you today. And sadly, that's all we have for you this week as well. But we will be back on Monday with another pretty fantastic lineup. So on Monday, I'll be joined by James Vaccaro, who is the Executive Director, Repattern and Special Advisor at Triodos Bank. We'll be talking about how they have had a pretty significant impact in the world in terms of the environment through money and everything that they're putting in place. On Tuesday, we'll be having Gary Turner, who is the co-founder and managing director at Xero, and actually just one of the funniest people I've ever kind of come across. So highly recommend you following Gary over on Twitter. On Wednesday, Mr. Simon Taylor will be making his hosting debut, and we'll be catching up with Joanne Dewar, who is the CEO over at Global Processing Services. Thursday, we'll be joined by Alex Reddish, who is the Chief Commercial Officer at Tribe Payments. We're going to be hearing about how the industry shifts, and Alex's predictions are really about what's happening in financial services post-COVID. So, we'll start looking on the other side of this wall. And on Friday, from our Spotlight show, we'll be joined by Assam Shah, who is the CEO of the amazing charity called You Make It, and also advisor on the Mayor of London's Equality, Diversity and Inclusion Board. So it's going to be a really, really interesting show. It's going to be a really, really interesting week, but unfortunately, that is all we have for you this week. If you want to tune in, we will see you same time, same place on Monday. Have a great day. Have a great weekend. Stay safe as you can, guys. Goodbye.